It has been unbelievably hot in LA lately. Despite that fact, I have decorated for fall, but that is like kind of distracting. So just to move it around. All right, hello. Today I wanted to talk about finding other people to collaborate with and how to make that work. It's great to be independent. It's great to do things alone. I don't know about y'all. I really like collaborating with other people when it works. Sometimes it doesn't work, but that's all part of the process, right? Like you can't have the good without the bad. So something you might have noticed as a consumer of arts and entertainment is that the same people tend to work together over and over again on different projects. I like to compare it to finding a soulmate because that's how it feels when you just find someone to collaborate with that just gets you, someone who can bring out the best in you and vice versa. A creative soulmate or soulmates, because you can have more than one. Emma Stone has explained this recently on Jimmy Fallon. I'll link the clip below because it's just an interesting perspective. I was first introduced to this concept in college. For those who don't know, I went to film school at Columbia College, Chicago. At my college, they referred to this as find your creative posse. It essentially was like on a checklist of things to find or goals to have while you were at college. But just like dating, finding a creative soulmate is not always the most fun. As they say, you have to kiss a lot of frogs to find your prince. Not every person you're gonna mesh well with. Sometimes you just don't know until you know. Don't get discouraged if you're in a place where no matter who you work with, you feel like it's not meshing or it's not working and you feel like you're the problem. There's always things we can do better and think about, but sometimes it's just like you don't collaborate well with this person. Or sometimes you can have a really good collaboration with someone and then something happens, you find out it doesn't work in the way that you thought it did or it's not working anymore. And again, the same thing can happen in relationships. So it's just one of those things that like sucks. Just don't let it discourage you and don't give up on finding good collaborators because they're out there and they're probably looking for you just as much as you're looking for them. So there are many ways you can go about finding people to collaborate with. If you're in a community of artists, like you're taking classes or you go to an art school, it's fairly easy because you're surrounded by other artists. So if you're in that situation, get to know the people around you. Working with others in your field, it's invaluable, and you're gonna find as you continue on in your art career that it really takes a village, no matter what you're doing. Another thing you can do is meet people and invite them over to just work on projects side by side. You don't need to even be working on the same thing. You can just each be working on your own thing and just in the same environment. Sometimes that's a good way to gauge and kind of dip your toe into a potential collaboration. And as you develop a relationship, you know, you can start asking like, hey, is it okay if I send you some of my work? And of course it takes time to sometimes build that trust. Something important to keep in mind is that you might not always collaborate well with your friends. And that's okay to have people that are your friends, people that are collaborators, people that are both your collaborators and your friends. Not everyone can fill every single role or need in your life. Some of my collaborators aren't my best of friends, but like we work really well together and we have a good relationship. Some people that started as collaborators became friends, and some people that started as friends became collaborators. So things can go in many different directions, and just because you can't collaborate with this person or you don't work well with this person on projects doesn't mean that you can't still be their friend. So other places you can look for collaborators if you're not going to an art school or if you're not taking classes would be the internet. Find ways to meet people, reach out to people whose art you really like. The key is to look at smaller pages, you know, who don't have much of a following. They're probably more likely to respond. But again, don't be afraid to aim big too. Just cast a wide net. Where are the spaces that artists are going to be and what means do you have to find them? Use your best judgment, be safe, always be in a public place. So what exactly should you be looking for when you're getting to know potential creative soulmates? So the first thing I like to keep in mind is experience level. I'd say you probably want someone that's around your same level of experience. And it's okay if someone is like a few steps above you or a few steps below you. You just want to be on the same staircase, if you know what I mean. And if you are working with someone that has more experience than you, make sure they're respecting you and respecting the things that you're learning and that they aren't talking down to you. And it's the same thing if you're working with someone who is more inexperienced than you. Make sure you're respecting them and you're understanding and you're patient. And also, it's important to understand your strengths and weaknesses because then you can find collaborators who can help bridge that gap. So for example, my strengths as a director are working with actors and telling a good story. When I look for cinematographers, I know that I need somebody really experienced in that area to bridge that gap. I don't know a lot of technical things. I don't know a lot about lighting. And when I look for actors, it's okay if they're inexperienced or if they're friends, because that is my strength. I can work with people who have a little less experience. But if you're maybe not as experienced working with actors, or like that's a weak spot for you, you might want to find actors who have a lot more experience. So another thing to keep in mind is feedback. The best feedback is the kind of feedback that does not feel like feedback at all. This is the kind of collaboration that I really enjoy. I think as artists, we all have something to say, and the best type of critique or feedback comes from understanding what someone wants to say with their art and then helping them get there. It has nothing to do with your opinion of the work. It has nothing to do with if you would watch or read their work. I think that's one of the hardest things about feedback. When you're looking for collaborators and you're sharing your work with people, if people are giving you their opinion or they're saying like, I don't understand this, I don't get this, it might just be it's not for them. You want to find people that are going to understand your work and find things to add to it that's going to further what you're trying to say. So if you're meeting with somebody that wants to like change your idea entirely, then it's probably not the best collaboration unless you feel like that's going to help you get closer to what you're trying to say. Art is incredibly subjective, and so is feedback. Two artists can be staring at the exact same scenery and they can paint it in two completely different ways. Is this the way that I would paint this, or is this the way that this person would paint this? So the best collaborators that I've worked with have instinctively understood the message I'm trying to get across in the project. They're able to add to it in ways that vibe with what I'm trying to say or that feel right. Conversely, I don't believe that there's right and wrong in art. So how can something feel right? And that's where the Big Magic comes in. If you have not read Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, I highly recommend. It's really put into words how I feel about art and how I feel about collaboration, that there's some sort of indescribable element to it. So that's what I'm labeling as vibe. I think it's similar to chemistry in a romantic relationship. It's similar to that spark that you feel when you're dating somebody that you're really crazy about. This doesn't mean that you're gonna agree on everything, but it just means you have a baseline of you know what you're trying to accomplish and you're committed at getting there together. Something that helps kind of suss out if your vibes mesh is to find out who their creative influences are, because then you can get a sense of how they talk about creativity, how they talk about the work, what themes are they drawn to. You can tell a lot about an artist by who their influences are. You don't necessarily need to like all the same things, but how do they talk about the work? How do they talk about what they like and dislike? Ultimately though, remember, just like being in the honeymoon phase of a relationship, someone can check all your boxes, say all the right things on the first date, and then you actually work with them and you realize, this is not for me. That can happen, and that's okay. You keep trying, you keep working with different people, you get to know your own style of working, and we move on. If you're just beginning, sometimes you just have to take shots in the dark and then you start to learn. So this is where you want to do a gut check. After you collaborated with someone, ask yourself, how did it make you feel? How do I think the project came out? Do I like it? Do I not like it? Do I feel like this person added to it? Would you work with this person? Again, biggest point that I can emphasize is to keep trying, which I know can be hard. And sometimes you're going to have to take breaks from collaborating with people. It's okay to feel burnt out. Sometimes you need to heal after a collaboration goes awry. Don't give up and continue to put yourself out there. Those are all my tips for finding a creative soulmate. If you have any horror stories or glory stories about collaborating with others, feel free to drop them in the comments. I would love to hear from you all. Bye.